This wasn't a budget announcement. This was a political hit straight at Australia's future. Young Australians were told to build, save, and invest. And now they're being told the system has changed against them. When Pauline Hanson spoke, she didn't soften anything. She called it a broken system, even went as far as labeling it socialist and communist, and turned a budget debate into a fight over who controls Australia's future.
He said he wants to help the next generation. And what he's done here is a lot of the younger generation who wanted to get into the property market, those that are still living at home, getting the assistance from their families, could have actually gone into buying an investment home, rented it out to help pay off the mortgage and, eventually have their own home. He's just kicked them in the guts with this. Even with investments, those people who don't have enough for a house have gone into the stock market, buying shares. That again is kicking them in the guts. So, capital gains tax, people like my age, we then saved everything. Rowan, we didn't have, we had the second-hand furniture, clothing, and then we actually saved our money to get into investment properties. And then we've accumulated this wealth to help us in our older age and save the government paying for us or into nursing homes. Now he's just taken it off us. Everything is just paying for over government spending. It's taxing us to the hilt. As far as I'm concerned, they're nothing but socialist, communist, Marxist government. This is taking the wealth from those inspirational to want to get ahead and dispersing it to those who want to do absolutely nothing.
And Pauline, I'm glad you actually come out and say communists and socialists, because that's exactly what they are. We don't hear any of that language from the coalition, but this is Socialism 101 straight out of Sydney University. That's where, and the other university they all went to. They hate capitalism. They hate the idea that people can get on their own, like you from a fish and chip shop, and you made your own way in the world. They hate that. They want everyone to be part of the government, beholden to the government jobs, their entire future, childcare, everything is owned by the government or the government controls all. It's terrifying. Thank you for calling it out for what it is, pure socialism. Now, what we then heard last night from Angus Taylor was in the right direction, but not nearly far enough, in my opinion. What did you make of it?
Look, Angus Taylor is trying to appeal to the One Nation voters. The Farrer by-election was a big wake-up call for them. They only polled about 12 to 13%. That's saying, hey, listen, they're knocking on our door. So Angus Taylor delivered a policy that's very much on the lines of One Nation. He's talking about knocking immigration back, to a number. It'll be the highest in Australia's history, but he couldn't even put a figure on it. So, I've come out and said 130,000 a year. Now that's different to having your workers coming in the country, those on visa holders and filling jobs in positions that people are screaming out for, especially in rural and regional areas. Now, I've even have advocated an 8-year before you can get citizenship. Taylor's picked up that policy of mine as well. So a lot of it was leaning towards One Nation's policies.
What do you think about this political exchange? Is this strong leadership or just political spin? Do you agree or disagree with what was said in this debate? Drop your honest opinion in the comments below and join the conversation.
I didn't feel there was any inspirational really getting there and doing something for the people. He touched on a lot of it was motherhood statements to me. But if he wants to be the government, he needs to produce more to the people what he can do. And I don't think he really produced that. I'll tell you the difference. Although he's leaning towards One Nation's policies, the difference is that I will actually be able to carry it through. Angus Taylor is going to be hamstrung by his members of parliament who are the moderates. They won't allow him to bring in a lot of this, especially with your climate change, gender dysphoria, all this rubbish, the wokeness, and that's going to be his big problem because they're going to block him. They will block him.
Which leads us to the inevitable question. Pauline, I listened to a speech you made before Christmas. I was privileged to be there and heard it, and I said to you after that speech, that's the first time you've sounded prime ministerial to me. And I meant it. It was a great speech. The question I most often hear now from people is, firstly, can One Nation work with the coalition to form a government? Or secondly, can One Nation form a government at the next election? And could Pauline Hanson be the Prime Minister of Australia? What's your answer to those people?
Well, there's a bit in that package which you've just said to me. Can One Nation be government? Of course we can. That's up to the people. It's the people's choice whether we can or not. Could I be Prime Minister? Only if I were to move from the upper house, the Senate, to the lower house. That decision I am contemplating, but I have made that decision.
What you just heard was not a normal political interview. This was a full ideological clash disguised as a discussion on a budget, and Pauline Hanson did not hold back for a second. From the very first answer, she didn't just criticize Labour's budget. She framed it as a direct attack on young Australians trying to enter the property market, trying to build wealth, trying to climb into financial independence. She painted a very specific picture, a generation that was told they could invest, buy property, build assets, secure their future, and then, in her words, kicked in the guts by policy shifts around tax, investment rules, and government spending. Whether you agree or not, the way she structured it is clear. This is not just economic policy to her. This is a deliberate transfer of wealth from individuals to the state. And then the language escalates. This is where the interview shifts from policy critique into political identity warfare. She doesn't just call it bad policy. She labels it socialist, communist, Marxist. That is a deliberate framing choice. Because once that label is attached, the debate is no longer about numbers or budgets. It becomes about ideology, survival, and control of the system itself. But the real turning point comes when the discussion moves beyond the budget and into power. Angus Taylor, the coalition, One Nation, and suddenly the entire conversation becomes about who can actually govern this country. Pauline Hanson doesn't just position herself as an opposition voice here. She positions herself as someone who can deliver what others cannot, because, in her framing, the major parties are constrained, blocked, and internally divided. Then comes the key psychological shift in the interview. The question is no longer, what do you think? It becomes, could you actually become Prime Minister? And this is where she does something very calculated. She doesn't reject the idea, and she doesn't fully accept it either. She leaves it open, conditional, strategic, contingent on moving from the Senate to the lower house. That single answer keeps the possibility alive without committing to it. What's important here is the underlying message being delivered to the audience. According to her framing, the current political system is stuck, the major parties are compromised, and only a hard reset in direction can fix it. So, by the end of the interview, this is no longer just about a budget or even an election strategy. It has been transformed into a much bigger narrative. A claim that Australia is heading in the wrong direction and that the only solution is a complete political realignment. And if you want more raw breakdowns like this, where political speeches, debates, and interviews are decoded without filters, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. We break down what they say, what they really mean, and what they don't want you to notice.